control the money supply, and set the cash rate. The cash rate is the basis of all other interest rates in the economy. And it's the central bank's role to set interest rates in the economy. So they do it through the cash rate, but to change the cash rate, you cannot make an announcement. Just like the exchange rate, we can't make an announcement and say, hello, everybody in the market, the foreign exchange market. Tomorrow, the Australian dollar will be worth $1 US. Yeah, everybody in the foreign exchange market will burst out laughing and say, sorry, it's only worth 70, maybe 72, 73 cents tops. On a bad day, it could be 68 cents US, yeah, to buy an Australian dollar. RBA, you could make as many announcements as you like saying the dollar is worth $1 US, but nobody believes you. Yeah. So, yeah, when it comes to the cash rate, the same thing applies. The cash rate is set by the supply and the demand for money. And later on this morning, we will be doing those diagrams. They'll be part of your final exam material. Okay, so let's have a look at this new topic of how does the RBA change the cash rate, and they do it through changing the money supply via open market operation. Yeah. So what is the cash rate? The cash rate is the rate at which banks lend money to each other. So if Commonwealth Bank gets short of money to make payments to all the other banks on behalf of their depositors who have swiped their cards, they need to borrow some money from ANZ Bank at the cash rate. Another way we can think of it is the cash rate is the rate at which banks borrow money. So when their cost of borrowing goes up, they're going to charge their customers more, typically the amount of that change. Okay, and open market operations is how the central bank changes the money supply. The buying and selling of government bonds or government securities by the central bank used to change the money supply. How do open market operations change the monetary base? Okay, let's have a look at that in a diagram. So let me go across to screen share and whiteboard, and let's look at this process of how the RBA can change the money supply. Creation of money diagram from earlier. So, yeah, how does the RBA, how the RBA changes the money supply? And that's done to change the cash rate, to set the cash rate. Set or determine the cash rate in the market. Yeah, principal interest rate, the one that the RBA is interested in. Okay, let's have a look at the RBA and the commercial banking system. We'll put the RBA up the top here, RBA, and let's draw the accounts that the individual commercial banks, we'll just concentrate on the big four, hold at the RBA. Now, by law, these banks have to have deposits at the RBA, cover the amount of money needed to be exchanged in the payment system, to cover their role in the payments system, when you swipe your card, Chris is a Commonwealth Bank member. When he swipes his card, Commonwealth Bank needs to make a transfer, let's say, to Westpac Bank. So we've got Commonwealth Bank here. We've got Westpac here, ANZ, and NAB, the big four banks. Okay, here are their deposits. Yeah, here are their deposits at the RBA. And what do we call these accounts that the money is deposited in? You'll see mention of this in the slides in the textbook. These accounts are called exchange settlement accounts. Yeah, nothing to do with foreign exchange. This is all domestic payments. Exchange settlement accounts, yeah, or ESAs. And the money inside these accounts is called exchange settlement funds, or ESF. Yeah, exchange settlement funds. Okay, here's the RBA. The RBA is the agency in the economy that controls the amount of money that's in the banking system that's available throughout the whole economy. Okay, so what are we going to do if the RBA wants to reduce the amount of money that's in the banking system? Let's say the economy is in expansion and there's too much money in the banking system. Remember, all this money here gets lent out by the commercial banks, yeah, and they only keep 10% of it. How can the RBA reduce the money supply? Because when they reduce the money supply, the cash rate will go up. The demand for money will be the same. We'll look at this a little bit later. But the supply of money, the cash circulating in the economy, will be lower. So the cost of money, the interest rate, will go up. Okay, so how do they do this? How could we reduce the amount of money that every student in the room today has in their bank account? When does your bank account go down? Is it when you buy something or when you sell something? Yeah, Napuni, what do you think? When does your bank account go down?
When you buy something?
Yeah, when you buy something and you swipe your card and the bank takes some money out of your account, or you transfer it directly yourself. Okay, so what the RBA does is they sell high yield, high interest rate deposit accounts to the banks. Yeah, so this is government securities, government bonds or government securities, high interest rate accounts, say a 1 year high interest rate account to the banks. So the RBA notices the banks are making about 3% on any money that they get in deposits. So how about they offer the banks 3.5%? You give us your money for 1 year. So they give the banks a government security certificate, and the banks take their money and they send their money to the RBA. Okay, so the RBA might sell $1 billion of government securities to banks. Banks take $1 billion and they send it to the RBA. They give it to the RBA. Okay, and they take a certificate. How does that work in the bank's balance sheet? Well, the bank's balance sheet's going to go down by a certain amount of money. They don't hold so much cash now in their ESA accounts because they've given that money to the RBA. Yep, they've given that money to the RBA. And what's going to happen then? Money supply, the result of this will be money supply is reduced, and that means supply goes down, the cash rate will increase. Money demand stays the same, the cash rate will increase. Okay, so the RBA can effectively change the cash rate through buying and selling government bonds. Buying and selling government bonds is the process known as open market operations. Or OMO for short. Yep, opposite process. Banks are holding a lot of government securities. Yeah, the opposite process is the banks take their government securities and sell them back to the RBA. Well, the RBA offers them, let's say the bank has a $1 billion government bond maturing. This is like a term deposit account maturing at the end of September for $1 billion. So the RBA might say, the bank's holding that, commercial bank. RBA might say to Commonwealth Bank, hey, if you give us that certificate now on the 31st of August, we'll give you the full amount of interest that you are going to receive at the end of September. Oh, that sounds like a pretty good deal. So the government securities go back to the RBA. They get sold by the banks. So the RBA offers the banks a very good price for their deposit accounts. And the government securities go back to the RBA. Fresh cash comes out to the banks. Yeah, new money, new RBA money comes back to the banks. The banks put it in their ESA accounts, and the ESA accounts get increase. The money, they lend it out, and the money supply increases, and supply of money in the economy is higher, demand for money is the same, so the price of money goes down. Yeah, money supply increases and the cash rate rises. We're going to do some calculations based on these, but that's the overall process of how the RBA changes the money supply to set the cash rate. It's through open market operations. Okay, any questions there? Any thoughts of how that all hangs together? Okay, we'll go back to our regular slide there. Yeah, so that's the process that we need to be aware of. You need to be able to describe it. Yeah, the banks buy new government securities from the RBA and pay for them with their money, or the banks sell government securities back to the RBA and receive fresh cash payment. Yeah, so that's the process just described there. A little example here. Suppose the RBA buys 100 million of government securities in the open market from ANZ. What happens? Yeah, so ANZ holds cash in its balance sheet. It holds government securities. Let's say they hold 1 billion cash and 5 billion in government securities. So they've sold 100 million of government securities back to the RBA. So RBA has effectively 100 million less in securities, 100 million more in cash. So they've converted some of their long-term deposit accounts at the RBA. That's how you could think of it. Converted some of those bond accounts at the RBA into cash, 100 million. Yeah. So Commonwealth ANZ Bank's going to end up with 100 million in cash. Okay, so securities. At the Reserve Bank go up by 100 million, and they go down at ANZ Bank by 100 million. And we need to look at the, and the cash arrangement. Yeah. So the bank ends up with $100 million more cash and $100 million less securities. Yep, so the open market operation purchased by the RBA, let's be clear there, increases the amount of cash banks have, and the amount of cash banks have is called the monetary base. Yep, so banks have another 100 million because that is cash, but the government bonds at the banks are not cash. So they sold $100 million of government bonds, turned it into cash. Cash balances or monetary base at the Reserve Bank has gone up. Yeah. Now, we're going to get to this one in a moment. But this is the more complex or the full formula for the money multiplier. Yeah. So why don't you try calculating this one here, the money multiplier. How are you going to, well, you don't have to remember the formula. I suppose you can, in our online phase, you can look this up. Students before just used to remember, what was the original money multiplier? The simple one, 1 over desired reserve ratio. What you do is add currency drain ratio to the top line and currency drain ratio to the bottom line. What was currency drain ratio? The amount of money that the public wants to hold in cash outside the banking system. Why is that important? Well, it reduces the amount of money that banks can, that banks can have to expand, doesn't it? So if people start to hold more money, an extra $1 billion in cash outside the banking system, that's $1 billion that the banks don't have to lend out. Yep, so the money supply would be smaller as a result. Okay, and we'll see that through the money multiplier process. Okay, can you make a quick calculation here for this one, just to see that you can do this? Now, be careful. Remember, 1 up here is 100%. You want to do it in percentages, and I don't recommend it. That would have to be 100%. Easier to turn everything into decimals. 1 plus the currency drain ratio, 2.8%, is what in decimals? 0.028. 0.02, 2%, 2.8 is a bit bigger than 2%. Yeah, 1%, 0.01. 2%, 0.02, 0 here, 0.028. Okay. So what have we got on the top line? Just try this. This is part of your final exam. What have we got on the top line? 1.065. And on the bottom line, we've got 0.028 plus 0.065. Yep. 0.093, isn't it? So we've got 1.065 divided by 0.093. Yeah. Murray, what did that come to? What did that come to? A total of yeah, Napuni, what did that come to? Yeah. 11.45. Yeah. Is that okay? Yeah. Is that okay, everyone? Yeah, difficult to write with this tool. Yeah, we've got 1.065 here, 1.065 on the top line, 1 plus 0.065. And we've got the two factors here in percentage terms. If we add those to, yeah, we add those up, decimals, that comes on the bottom line to 0.093, or if you like in total, 9.3%. Okay, yeah, we'll go off and do some examples of those. Okay, clear that. In here. Yeah, so the money multiplier gets multiplied by any change in the monetary base. That's our third formula in the formula sheet, to give you the new quantity of money or the new money supply. Yeah, that's our final comment there. So that's how the central bank changes the cash rate through open market operations.